Hello everyone, I'm Annie Gibbins and you're listening to Memoirs of Successful Women, the podcast where you get to hear candid conversations with fascinating women from around the globe who share aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure their success and what they have learnt along the way. Hello and welcome to Memoirs of Successful Women. Today I have the delight of introducing you to Emma Jane Taylor, who is the CEO of The Works Company, which is a series of lifestyle businesses. She's also the author of Don't Hold Back. She's a CBT practitioner. She's also on Talk the Taboo and the Wellbeing Show and Power Hour. And I am delighted to welcome her to my program today. Welcome, Emma Jane.
Oh, thanks, Annie. It's lovely to be here with you. Thank you.
So you've had, it's an absolute delight. So you've had a huge year this year. You have been named, I think you've been nominated for Giving Back with Women Business Award. You've been named Inspirational Woman, Influential Woman. So how does it feel to be at that stage of your career to start off with?
I would say quite humbling, actually, Annie. You know, I think any kind of award that is given to you or you're nominated for is a huge, huge accolade to where you are in your life. I've had lots of nominations. I've been very privileged over the years with the awards. But I think it's this year, the 2021 award, that has been the biggest one for me. It's been the most humbling one. It's the Giving Back Award I'm nominated for. And for me, with my life journey, with where I've come from, where I'm going to, this is the one that means the most in every way.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And so how are you giving back? What is that award? What's the sort of the reasoning behind that award? How does the world know what Emma Jane is doing to give back to the community that you're in?
So I give back in various ways. I mean, my main giving back is giving a platform to voices. So, you know, giving people who aren't heard a chance to be heard, giving people who are experiencing difficulties the chance to share those difficulties, to make a difference to the other people suffering in silence, to help people feel safe, to give something back to the many struggling in silence, and help people understand that they're not alone. And I think that is my biggest platform, is to help people know that they are not alone. I felt alone for so many of my years, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that. But, you know, my vulnerable years were all of that. You know, I didn't feel heard. I didn't have someone to talk to. I didn't feel listened to. I was struggling in silence. I didn't have a voice. I was nervous, and I had some very difficult times facing me. But I'm not alone. Many people out there, boys and girls, men and women, are struggling in silence. And we need to hear these voices. We need to let them know it is okay, that they are okay. We are safe. We are going to look after you. And we need to put some more protection around people. And I guess that is my biggest thing. I'm giving people that chance, that space, that opportunity to feel safe, to give back and feel protected themselves by the work that I'm doing and the work that they're doing.
I love that on so many levels. And for those people who say, wow, is there a rush on almost of people having their stories and people needing their voice heard? The message is, well, yes and no. Yes, that we're giving now a platform, and that is such a great thing. But no, there's not a rush on. These people always had their voice. They always needed to share their story. And the fact that people didn't hear that or weren't receptive to that, or they didn't feel that they had the opportunity for that. I mean, that's the saddest thing, isn't it? You know, when you aren't heard and you are suffering in silence, you know, it's not surprising that, you know, you're passionate, and I'm passionate as well, about people being able to go, you know, whatever's happened to you in life, please share that with someone so that we can actually help you, believe you, support you, and all of those things.
Yeah. Oh gosh, absolutely. And I think, you know, certainly as a child going through very many difficulties, I thought that's just what I had to do, was go through those difficulties, face that as I did, and stay silent without a voice. But it's absolutely not the case. You know, I was asked by a BBC 3 documentary here in the UK, what were my regrets?
Mm.
Or what are my regrets? And I don't like to have regrets. I think we face everything for a reason. But if I had to give an answer, and my regret was that I didn't speak up sooner, would it have changed anything? Who knows? Would it have made my life any different? Who knows? But I could have done something sooner.
Mm. Mm.
And I think that's a really important point for people to take away is, you know, you're not alone. You do have a voice, and you don't have to use it on the scale that I use it, you know, and the events that I do in TV, magazines, national newspapers. You can simply find a friend, find a therapist, put a text together and tell somebody, or write a letter. There are ways that you can share your messages, and however you share them, you've got to be safe in the knowledge of who's reading them will be the right person for you.
Yeah, that's it. And that's a good point to make, that not everyone has to be a champion for those, you know, of that cause. And, you know, often it's kind of like, oh, well, I don't then want to become the public voice of, and you don't have to be. All it's
no.
You know, most people aren't. And that's the reality, you know, that when, you know, many people that I interview on this show, once again, will say that exactly what you just said, that they should have said earlier. The only regrets are I should have come out earlier with this information. But the majority, actually, it's just about having their message heard, their truth heard, and feeling supported at that time, you know, and that's worth gold, right?
Yeah.
So let's unpack your story then. You wrote in Don't Hold Back your whole story. So you have shared that with the world. And it started from the text of when you were sexually abused at age 9, very young age, and the consequences after that throughout, you know, your life, particularly your early teens, and the trauma of that, and obviously not having your voice heard, sending you on a downward spiral, you know, definitely through your education, onto drugs and eating disorders and so forth, until, you know, the early 20s, really. Share, if you may, on that experience and what you went through, just so that others can relate a little bit to the context of what we're discussing.
Yeah, and if I may, Annie, I'm going to go back a little bit further, I think, because my whole picture is really, you could understand it better or maybe not. You know, I remember, probably my earliest memory was when I was about 2 or 3 years old. I lived with my mum and my stepfather, my 2 brothers. From time to time, my step siblings would come and visit. We had a cat called Honey, and that was my life. You know, that was my normal life. I was happy. I used to go and visit my father every other weekend. He would pick me up. He would take me horse riding. We'd go and watch Bruce Forsyth's Generation Game when they were in the UK. We'd go to the sweet shop, Percy Lovejoy's sweet shop. And it was just fun. Yeah. Everything about those younger years for me was happy. I wasn't unhappy. I had a nice family situation. I had just a lot of goodness around me. So when we went on holiday, when I was 9 years old, we went overseas and I was assaulted. It was the first time that I really had experienced anything bad. And up until that point, I was just a happy child, enjoying animals, enjoying life, enjoying friends. And, you know, this situation came to me when the restaurant owner, who had befriended the family on holiday, was taking the children out to see the animals. And I innocently went. My parents let me go. There was other families there we'd got friends with. It just seemed an okay situation. And then this one night, he took us out into the light where the animals were. And like I say, I was an animal lover, and I was just happy to be there. And he just moved me, not very far, just moved me slightly away from my other friends and the other children. And I could still see the taverna. You know, we weren't that far away from the taverna. You could still hear the laughing, the plates being thrown, the dancing, the singing. Everything about that night was happy. And then he took me out into the shadows and assaulted me. And it didn't last very long. It was over before I knew it. I didn't know what it was. I had no experience of sexual education. I didn't know what sexual abuse meant. I didn't know what just happened to me. So I never spoke about it. I remember running back into the restaurant. I remember hot-footing it in there with a racing heart. But that was it. I never spoke about it. And so life just continued. That happy, wonderful life that I had was still there. I think there was a little chink in the armor, but it wasn't denting me hugely at that point. It was just there. It was an awareness. And then one weekend, my lovely father, this guy, my handsome father, he was my prince. He was just everything to me. I loved this man so much. And he took me to the horse riding stables, but I noticed on this occasion, he only took me, and my two brothers were standing at the window and looking sad. And then this particular day, he said, look, I have a problem. One of the weekends, I'm due to see you, and we need to talk that through. He pulled in a lay-by, and we had this long chat. And again, I was only 11. I mean, I didn't really have any conversation or awareness of, I didn't have any words really. I just went horse riding and then came back. And then he said to me, I'll call you tomorrow and let me find out what you want to do. So he gave me that responsibility. He gave me ownership of his problem. And I didn't work that out till much later. So he called me the next night. He dropped me home on the Sunday. He called me that night. He said, what's your decision? And I said, look, I want to see mummy on this weekend, this Mother's Day weekend, but I don't want to stop seeing you, Daddy. And he said, well, you've made your choice. And that was it. He put the phone down and that was it. So, this wonderful little bubble that I lived in suddenly was massively damaged. I ran out of the house. I was beyond upset. I mean, just beyond. And someone like your father, your the love of my life, ripped my soul, my heart, my very being out of me. And that was it. I mean, that was 37 years ago. I've not seen him since. So I went through a lot of turmoil, a lot of wrangle, and I kind of went from this really nice child into a very depressed, very sad, very lonely. My schooling, I went from a nice child into a horror, a monster. I was isolated at school. I was suspended regularly. I was put into school psychiatry, labelled a juvenile delinquent, went on daily report. I was often told I was a failure, the girl going nowhere. I started, as you said in the intro, I was taking drugs, I was drinking, I became bulimic. I had OCD. I suffered with terrible night terrors and fear of being abandoned. And I was really worried about what I might say to other people because I was worried that I might lose them from my life. I was constantly needing to go for a wee. I was panicky, paranoid, late developer, anxiety, everything.
Yeah.
It just triggered me. And then out of the darkness came a family friend who just became the father I never had. But it was more than that. He didn't just become my friend. He groomed me. He sexually abused me. He degraded me. He tortured me. He manipulated me. And all of that drinking and drugs and bulimia and OCD and night terrors, it all just magnified. And I was a problem child. And, when you kind of look back, it's easy to see in hindsight, right? Yeah. It's easy to have these conversations in hindsight. But at the time, I just had no clue what was going on. Everybody around me clearly saw the change in me, but they just assumed it was because of my father, which it was in many ways, but it was far deeper than that. And that was really my life, Annie, from 9 till I stepped away from my abuser when I was about 16, 17. But I'm sure you were aware that, by then trauma bonding has set in. Yeah. And it's very difficult when you're very vulnerable and you've been rejected and abandoned by, the big figure in your life. It's very difficult to walk away from people because you're fearful of what might happen next.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so I stayed in that world. 16, 17, when boys started coming along. And so that's when I started stepping away. So in essence, that was my 9 years really or 8 years of difficulties. When it had all started off so nicely, it was like dominoes.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. It's just, it is hard to fathom, but the sad reality is it happens far too often, as we know.
Oh,
And
all the time.
And that's it. Once you are that, particularly later in your journey when you were groomed, they're doing it deliberately. They know you're the perfect person to groom, and therefore they get away with it. The most amazing reality is that other people don't ask more. And I found that in my own personal journey as well, that, you're thinking, well, when you go from a very happy-go-lucky child to, on a downward spiral, then why aren't more people asking why? It's such an easy, on reality, that's right. It is terrible that your father seemed to think it was all in or nothing, and that's his journey and his choice and his major cost and sad impact and consequence on you. But it's amazing that more people don't ask, is it more, or they just assume, oh, it's because of this reason. They don't ask more questions. And that's, have you thought about that more? Didn't they realize, why don't they ask? Because a child, it's very hard for a child to think, oh, well, I'm going to tell them this information when you don't even know what's happening really yourself. You don't know what's right and what's wrong, and it just feels uncomfortable and it feels wrong. But surely if those in authority knew that, they would be asking more questions, right?
Yeah, so I'm now a child sex abuse activist. And a lot of these questions come up all the time. It's not we need to see better from what we hear and hear better with what we see, because we haven't done over, we're in the 21st century now, right?
Yeah.
The 20th century children, me being one of them, we didn't have these conversations. We weren't aware, but we are now. But the trouble is now, well, not only are we aware, we've also got the difficulties of social media and the presence of online difficulties for young people. So the talking is done in a very different way, but recognizing it is really important. So I'm actually working on another book at the moment, and that is really focused on this conversation and what we can do as society to understand better what is going on around us, because it's really important. Interestingly, my school friends of those sort of 11 to 16 years old, I left school at 16 being told I was a failure, being told I was the girl going nowhere, and of course I believed that. Didn't really felt like I'd left with any friends, and just went off into my career as the failure. And actually, I've reconnected with them in the last 6 months, and none of them were aware of my story until now. But now it's clear as day to them, right? One of my friends said, I remember you shaking and constantly being sick. I just thought that was the way you were. But realizing now, and she was really upset, actually. She was really sad. And I said to her, look, it's not your fault. It's no one's fault. It's just the way we were as kids. And a couple of other people came up saying, you were so naughty at school. You were never horrible to other girls. You were just very naughty. And I've been trying to wrap my brains of what that red flag was. And then it came to me, that was it. That is the red flag, right?
Yeah.
So, I think it's hard to believe now of us now as professional women, how we could have been that person, because usually people associate how you are back then with how you are now. And of course, that's not true at all. Wow. And so there's been a big change, but it's recognizing those signs. And I think going back to your question of that, it's talking more, it's understanding better. My mum and my stepfather and my family aren't bad people. They just aren't armed with the education. I'm a mother now. I'm constantly on my daughter. How are you? What's going on? If she says, yeah, mummy, I'm good, but you know what? Oh, don't worry about it. Yes, well, I am going to worry about it. What is that her butt? Let's just talk that her butt through. And so I've become much more aware from my story, and I'm sharing that through the work that I do in my business, in my industry, but also as a child sex abuse activist. And because these are important conversations to have, it's recognizing what we need to do as a society.
Yeah, 100%, Emma Jane. I love that, because that's exactly it. In our day, I suppose, and even in my story, I went from top of the class in year 6 to then bottom of the class in year 7 with eating disorder, and the massive changes happening as a result of sexual assault. And the fact that no one asks why, it must be just for a understandable reason, or they didn't feel comfortable. Whereas now we're in a different time. And, I think that's the thing, you suddenly go, yeah, there'll be ebbs and flows, and we'll all get, have our not so not so pleasant moments in life, and that's normal. But it's not normal to see massive changes, massive, shifts, and particularly when children have had a nature of a certain type and then have really shifted, and I think that's exactly it, is to call it out. It's better to go, I was overprotective or over caring, than
Absolutely.
not care at all. It's kind of like going, I'm a bit concerned, I am here for you. If there is something, I'm happy to listen to you. No,
Yes.
no judgment, right? Because that's what we didn't have, and that's exactly right. And good on you for campaigning for that. That we need to be, just a lot more vigilant to support people in those times.
Absolutely.
So how did you, at age 17, when you finished this downward spiral, which has gone on for years, and you then at the end of there going, well, I might as well leave school, and people are telling you that, you're never going to amount for anything. How did you then suddenly, I know you ended up in Spain at a time in your journey, and then suddenly you ended up, creating businesses and getting into fitness and wellness and bits and pieces. What happened to you? What was that shift or moment or series of events that went and said, you know what, I am actually worth more than this. I need to rise above this circumstance to find who I truly am?
Well, it wasn't easy, Annie, as I'm sure you know. None of this has been easy. There wasn't the light switch moment. It was a lot of thought and process. So yes, when I was 17, 18, PTSD started catching up on me. I didn't know what PTSD meant. I just didn't. I just knew I was feeling really sad, and all those emotions that we talked about earlier, the bulimia, the OCD, they just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. I was kind of out of control in myself. I left school with nothing really. I tried a bit of hairdressing. I tried a bit of temping. I was just, I was the failure. One thing I really loved was dancing. I'm a trained dancer, and I've danced in some amazing places over my life, and that was kind of the thing that grounded me, was being able to dance, being able to perform. And anyone who's gone through difficulties and has been in the performing arts arena will tell you how it's really helped them. That creative side was a really big part of them. But, I needed to change. I was all over the place, and, boys had started coming in and showing fancying me. And I wasn't really sure. I was quite nervous about relationships. I had a few friends around, but still didn't talk. Then I got the opportunity, like you say, to go to Spain and work as a nanny. So I flipped back and forth from the UK doing that. And one year I just went around Spain. I think it was when I was 21. I went to Spain when I was 19. And in between, I would come back and work in bars and clubs back in the UK. And then one year I just literally drank myself round Spain and came back, and I was shaking. And I thought, you know what, I don't like this. I didn't feel good. And I was working in a bar. These were a couple of poignant moments in my life. And the punter came in. One of the punters, his name was Chris, and I still talk about him now, and he has no recollection of this conversation, but I do. He said to me, EJ, really, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, I want to be a dancer. And he was laughing. I said, why are you laughing? He said, you're just never going to be a dancer or running your own business. I said, why? He said, because you are just out partying all the time. You're always taking drugs. You're just crazy. And it was sort of like that. Oh my goodness, is that my legacy?
Yeah.
The drunken bum, the drug ad, And I was like, no, this isn't what I want. And I guess when I was 19, my stepfather had a heart operation. Now, up until this point, I hated this man. I hated everybody. Let me be clear. I hated everybody in my life. I was angry. I was full of hurt. I was full of pain. I was distorted, and I couldn't see straight. And then I got a call to say my stepfather had been taken into hospital. And it really stopped me again in my tracks, because this man had given me a roof over my head since I was 2. He'd effectively brought me up, and, you know, he'd been behind a lot of the difficulty conversations with my biological father. I do remember distinctively him saying, "Don't do this to your children." And I hated him. You know, I was violent towards him. I was just nasty and horrible. And again, you know, that was me. That wasn't him. That was me. And so we were faced with him being in hospital, and he was in London. So I ran. I sort of grabbed a train, got up to London as quick as I could, and I walked into the room, and I was shocked by Annie. I was just so shocked. Here is this man, lovely man, who'd been kind and gracious and caring to me all of my life, was lying there on this hospital bed, full of wires and beeps and drips, and it just looked terrible. And it my heart just I don't know, it just sunk, and it was a real awakening for me. I was like, oh my goodness, this man is the only man who's ever loved me, who's only ever cared for me. He's only ever wanted what's right. He's taken the hits, he's taken the violence, he's taken the distressing stuff. He didn't need to do any of that, right? And he did. And not just with me, but I mean the complications around the whole of our family. And he took it. And why did he take it? Well, he clearly loved us. And suddenly it was like this big change. And I remember looking at him saying, please don't die. Please don't die. I love you so much. I am so sorry for everything. I need to go and sort myself out. I need to go and make a change. I need to do this, but I can't do it without you. And I sat with him for 48 hours. I didn't leave his bed, and I just cried, held his hand. We have a program. I don't know if you've heard of Dad's Army, but he loved Dad's Army. Yeah. And he started coming around the 24 hours after I first saw him. And I remember my mother being in the room, and I said, look, I'm going to stay and watch Dad's Army. And I just cuddled him, and it was such a powerful moment. And he said he's always thanked me for that, and said it was a real turning point for him in his recovery. And it was that time, Annie, that I thought, this is it, I need to do something. And that was around the time that I sort of like went back and forth to Spain. And then I came back and I rang up a therapist and I said, I need to see you. I rang up a therapist out of town because I didn't want to bump into her. But it was a turning point for me. It was when I went, right, I need to do something. I need to own this and not hurt people who love me. And it was that was part of my next phase. And that wasn't easy, taking that call. It wasn't easy. It was like someone just softened my black heart, that darkness inside me, and turned things around. And there was light. There was a glimmer of hope. Yeah. Wow. And it was that hope that made me take that step into therapy. I remember my first therapy session, and I think I cried for an hour. There was a lot of pain, and you know, you're a victim, right? I felt like a victim. I no longer feel like a victim, but I felt like a victim, and I needed to put my puzzle back together. My life was a mess. I mean, it was a car crash. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know really who my friends were. I had no direction. I missed my dancing. And so my therapy started, and you know, while that was starting, I decided to start an adult dance class, and it was from here that life just started changing.
Wow. Because you suddenly found, what you loved, what you always knew you loved, right? So there's no sudden surprise there. It's actually just permission to do what you love and see where that will take you and others on your journey. Wow. The value of therapy and the message that it's never too late. That's right. And it's got to be at the right time. You know, I imagine if people had said you should go to therapy even 6 months before, a year before, you would have went, no way. You know, it's got to be the right time.
Yeah. Well, I was thrown into psychiatric care when I was, 13, 14 at school. And I was just like, whatever. I mean, just wasn't interested. I mean, I just sat in this room. I remember it was a clinical room, me, a microphone, and my therapist.
Mm.
And I remember sitting there with my hands underneath my legs, and I was just like, yeah, whatever, no, yeah.
Don't
I
care.
didn't care because I didn't know how to.
Exactly. And you didn't it's also a belief of what's possible, right? You care when you have hope that things are possible for you, that there's there's an empowered future, right? And you and I both are into that. And so that's right. When you're at that state and you go, well, I've lost everything that was of value to me, and I'm actually not feeling anymore. So that at that time, it's not surprising that you don't respond, because you kind of go, well, to what? That's I think we need to remember that troubled time for teens, and particularly when you've had that taken away from you. So I love what you did. You leaned into your dancing, which is what you loved, and then through that you then expanded your fitness repertoire, if you like. And so was that because you actually went, not only do I love dancing, I love all of general fitness and well-being as well? Or is it because in a business opportunity there's it's a collective? What was that for you?
I'm very passion driven, and for me, starting those dance classes, one dance class, in fact, I'm celebrating. Well, when I started those dance classes, it was 25 years ago. That they still go on now, and some of the members are still there with new I have a new team of teachers now, and they're still there, and it's such a lovely feeling. But I started that dance class, and it was liberating. Like I say, I was temping, I was doing office jobs, I was doing jobs I hated, and I was just like, right, that's it. I'm just going to focus on the stuff that makes me happy. And it kind of went aligned with the therapy. In fact, one thing I did forget to mention, my therapist, the first time I spoke to her, she did a lot of Reiki as well. And well, this is one of my therapists, I've had millions. And she said to me, EJ, go home and eat some walnuts. They're really good for the heart. And I remember going home, and all I did was eat walnuts for weeks. Because I just felt that I believed it, right? I just really embraced anything that anyone told me that was good. And these walnuts, every time I see a walnut, I think, oh, it's good for my heart.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So I started my dance classes, and I did some work in schools actually teaching dance, and that was just beautiful. I mean, just beautiful, just to see children enjoying stuff that I had enjoyed, even through some of my difficult years, was just a beautiful thing. I stopped drinking, I stopped taking drugs. I also stepped away from the circle of life I was living with the people I was living. And now I'm not suggesting for 1 minute they were bad people. They just weren't right for my life, because what they were doing was allowing me to put a veil over me to cover up my difficulties. And so by stepping away and doing the dance, it allowed this veil to come up, and it allowed me to start, it's a bit like the daisies start coming up, the sun starts shining, and it just felt, a real beautiful moment. While I was doing my dancing, I was very interested in fitness. And then I decided, actually, if I'm going to go out and do any kind of business, this is probably a good attachment, a hand in glove. And so I went and got all the qualifications you can think imaginable from the fitness industry, and got very highly qualified with nutrition and weight management as well. And so the two worked together. I was asked to choreograph a show, and it's suddenly like those next 2 years felt like they were really nourishing. I felt nourished by dance. I love dance. One of my specialities is tap dancing. I was able to teach, I think, like 5 tap classes. We had 3 dance classes. They were mine. It was just me doing that with a new community. And no one knew my story. I didn't obviously share my story. I had some great mentors coming behind me in the fitness industry and also in the performing arts industry. And my therapy and I call it my recovery years. This was the start of my recovery years. And they didn't just happen in 1 week, 2 weeks, 12 weeks. There were years and years and years of recovery. And then when I was 26, 2 years after I started my adult dance classes, when I was 27, I opened my own performing arts school for children. And this is for children aged 4 to 16. And it was just me, a colleague, and 20 kids.
Wow.
And this year we're celebrating 21 years in business. We have like 400 or 500 members. I have a great big team around that. But I did that. I did that with some great support and people behind me. I then really pushed into the fitness when I was in sort of my 27 to 30 years, and developed that. I developed a big client base and really, really enjoyed that part. I started employing a few people at this time, getting people behind the business. I had no agenda, Annie. I didn't start to kind of think, you know, I'm going to be talking to Annie Gibbins one day, sharing my personal story. I never thought I'd talk about my story. I just wanted to live. I just wanted to be that girl before 9 years old when she was very happy. And I was becoming that, you know, I was becoming that. And then I put together some timetable on the fitness stuff. My daughter was born and when I was 36 years old. And it was just like things were really coming together. You know, my life felt strong. My personal life felt strong. My world around me was nice. It was full of performing arts and good people and fitness. I hadn't been drinking and taking anything for like 6 years, like 10 years by the time my daughter had come. I was feeling really healthy, but not just physically, mentally and emotionally. I was feeling much stronger. And then it was here that I was asked to be interviewed. I was asked if I would be interviewed on a local TV station, Nets TV, about my business story. And I guess it was around this time. I think I was probably about 40 now. So, you know, we're talking nearly 16 years after the therapy had begun. My business was established, my team was established, and it just all felt good. But one thing didn't feel good is that even though I was doing all this therapy, I kind of hadn't talked about it. And I hadn't got a burning desire to talk about it. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
The TV company came in and said, look, can we interview you as a local businesswoman? You've clearly done very well over the last sort of 15, 16 years. I said, yeah, you know, I'm happy to be interviewed. Well, quite exciting as well.
Yeah, very.
And so I went in, and it was nerve-wracking to start with, but this guy interviewed me and he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Yeah. And then after the interview, they said, you know what, EJ, there's a girl going on maternity leave. And she does the health fitness shows. You've clearly got a lot of knowledge. Would you consider coming and doing like a maternity cover just for a month or so? And I said, yeah, happy to do that. Yeah. 4 years later, they'd given me my own show, the wellbeing show, and everything had pushed on. Everything had pushed on. But the one thing that hadn't pushed on was I still had a little bit of thought around my personal story. I was now seen as a very successful woman. And when I say yes, I was, I don't see it as a monetary thing. I don't see anything that I've achieved in life as monetary. I see it now, right here, having this conversation, and the mental, emotional, and physical impact it's had on my life. This is the biggest success, to be able to be authentic. So I'm interviewing all these people on TV and talking about their stories, their real life situations. And I go home thinking, gosh, all these people. And of course, no one sees this side of my difficult life. And it suddenly just felt like I needed to share that story. And I didn't know how, just didn't know how. And then Venus Women magazine, out of nowhere, came up and found me. They headhunted me and they said, look, we're doing... we'd like you to feature on the front cover of our magazine for our summer edition, because, you know, you're clearly someone who would be inspirational for women. And I said, I'm happy to. And they did a 6-page article on me. And the picture was the very iconic picture now of me in that pink chair.
Yeah.
And I said, but, you know, life hasn't always been this easy. There was a difficult side of my personal story. I would like to touch on that. And they said, yeah. So I touched on my personal story in this magazine. It was very, you know, I've had some personal difficulties, and, you know, life hasn't been easy, that kind of.
Yeah.
And then they said, you know what, EJ, it'd be really good if you elaborated on this. Could we film you doing it? And then they've got an event coming up later that year. Could I be the compere and have my personal story shared in the event. And I thought, oh, you know what, just go for it. Yes, yeah, I didn't really sort of give it too much thought.
Yeah.
Until I realized the event was at a football stadium. There was going to be about 400, 500 people in the room. And my story was going all around the screens before I came on stage. And my parents were there, my friends were there on a table.
And they had no idea.
Well, they did. Obviously, I had spoken to them when I was in my when my therapy started, I started talking to my parents. So they were aware, but it's still very difficult, right? As a parent, I understand that.
Yeah.
Anyway, these screens came up, the event started, and they introduced me as the compere and the front cover of their magazine. And on the videography, all I can remember is 4 great big screens was me and my story. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what have I done? And the chaperone saying that my music played, This Girl Is on Fire was my theme, to walk down the runway onto the stage. And I said to my chaperone, I must be crazy. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do this.
Wow.
And my chaperone said, you have to, EJ, you have to. This is it. This is your time. Do it. Do this. And I had a bit of sick in my throat. And as I walked down the runway, I was shaking. When I got on stage, I was shaking. And I started my speech. I was shaking. And then I stopped and I just said, you know what? I've never spoken about this on a public scale like this. I mean, I speak all the time in my business. It's just the nature of my business. But when it was about my personal story, it just, I was just not comfortable at that point, but I did it.
Wow.
The room just went, oh.
Yeah.
And so many people, Annie, contacted me over that night and the next day to say, thank you. You've really opened the door for me to go and have therapy. And I always said, if I could help one person, then it will have all been worth it. And that's where really then why the book came around, you know, when I was 45 years old. So, you know, we're talking about, you know, only a few years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago now. So in 2018, I had my book published and it's called Don't Hold Back. It's my story and it's how I've got through my difficulties to be the woman I am today.
Yeah.
And I've always said if it can help one person, it would have been the right thing to have done.
Yeah.
And it was hard putting all this stuff on paper, right? Because, you know, I would have been happily just said, I'm Emma Jane Taylor. I've gone through some very personal difficulties and this is how I've come out of it.
Yeah.
My author friend, he's a very well-known author. He said, EJ, you need to be credible and people really need to get behind who you are. And they're not going to do it with that. And so it took a few attempts and then I eventually put down on paper, my book went out there. And over the last 3 years, it's just been, wow. I mean, the book has been read across the world. I've got women, men, boys, girls contacting me from all over the world. Southeast Asia, Australia, Canada, Dubai, Europe, Africa. I mean, everywhere.
It's amazing.
Yes. And do you know what's truly amazing is how prevalent this is.
Yeah.
I always knew it was, I know I'm 1 in a million or billion or whatever it is, but really it's frightening.
Yeah.
It's frightening that there are so many kids out there struggling, so many kids afraid to speak up. And my story has really helped them. And for that for me is a good thing. So I went from there on to becoming a radio presenter. I still run my 2 businesses, Stage Works and Nutritious Works. I have a lovely team. I have an admin team. I have 2 PAs. And we work really hard keeping that business together. But now on the other side of that is the work that I'm doing now as an author. I'm represented as a speaker. My story has been out all over the world. I work with Talk with Taboo. I work on radio shows. And now I give a platform for other people as well. And I think that's a really important part for me. And just in this last year, my 2nd book has started to be written. And I never thought I'd write another book. I was, at the end of 2020, a grandma, and my story was in the national press here in the UK and all over the world, I guess. And a grandma on the back of it wrote to my PA and said, would EJ write another book? Because actually she's got some great lessons that could help so many people now and in the generations to come. I said, forget it. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And here I am 6 months later, thick into a book. It's I've become a child sex abuse activist. I've just accepted a role on an advisory board that works with sex offenders and survivors, because I believe we need to understand. I haven't, this isn't about putting sex offenders anywhere, but understanding and getting knowledge, because we need to work out what we're missing, and that for me is a real big part of the work. So I've got some really exciting opportunities coming up, which I can't really talk about yet because they haven't been signed and sealed, but all my work now is really about giving back, giving people a voice, giving a platform, letting people be heard, and supporting the many struggling in silence. But more than that, Annie, I want to give back to the people who haven't been touched, and I want those to have valuable lessons that I can share so they can sleep at night.
Yeah, beautiful. Oh my goodness. Your journey is so powerful, because that's right, you've got to the dream now that it is all about giving. It is all about helping others. It is all about the platform, while still running your own businesses, which are your natural passion, right? If you didn't have all this trauma, which we actually hope people don't have, then that would have been your journey, right? So you found, your purpose and your natural talents to be able to build those businesses despite, which is super impressive. Amazing. And it shows also that story that, that's right, even if you didn't do everything perfect at school, you can still go on and become an entrepreneur and grow businesses and make things happen. So never limit yourself. Is that a message in the story? But it also shows that, when you do that, and as you get older, when there's things that you feel that you can give back, because they are so powerful to you, they are so real, and you go, well, I can use my story to empower others to be able to, have that confidence, because it's an incredible boldness and confidence required to be able to share those very personal stories. And not everyone, finds that. So often they need to have people around them to surround them, to give them that security and that safety to be able to do that more and more, because not everyone is from, a loving family who would just go, oh, thank you for sharing, oh my goodness, they'll always feel devastated, but they would be there for you. Well, many people, that's not their reality. They're not heard or not believed, or ostracized because of that. And then that's really serious consequences. I think it's amazing what you're doing. And I think that's incredible that when you said, that's right, that experience. And I know that when I'm doing my biography, it's so emotional. It's so passionate, powerful, unpacking your life and story, that you finish it going, oh, I don't think I'd ever do anything again. And then there you go, 3 years later. But that's it. And that's because you've leaned into, listening to that feedback. There is more. There is more that people need to hear, and definitely for us at this stage, and for those who can look in and be, I bet you do that at your dance studio or in your businesses, to actually be looking with fresh eyes of noticeable changes in particularly teenagers, young adults, being able to sort of just be in tune with the possibility that everything isn't all right. And the earlier people are able to share that, the better, right? Why would any of us want people suffering for years and years before, that actually comes out? So
and absolutely, we have obviously a system in place to monitor any situation. And, I have, like I say, I have a team of people. I'm not involved as much in the teaching side. I'm sort of sitting with my team on the management side. But if anything is flagged, I will deal with it straight away. And quite often than not, when I deal with it and go to a parent or carer or guardian, there is a story behind the story. So then we work out how to monitor and look after that child in our care. And I do a lot of work with young people now, going to schools and raising awareness. And I remember last year before lockdown, I was working in a school, I go and do sort of motivational work, and there was a little boy in the corner, and he just looked sad the whole time I was there. And they were like, oh, that's just the way he is. And I I remember saying, you need to get behind him a little bit more. And he said, well, he has a lot of therapy. He has, and I said, yeah, he needs more than that. You know, he needs to see empathy. He needs to see care. He needs to see love. And he clearly isn't. He's just a very shy boy sat in a corner. And you know, my heart broke at what he may be going through. And you can't help everybody, but what we can do is share our voice, which can help everybody. You can't, you know, there are so many broken people in this world, and you're doing your bit, I'm doing my bit. We're all doing our bit to help put those pieces back together. But more than that, helping the next generation, which is really important. So there's definitely a system in place to recognise. And with all my work, you know, wherever I am in the world, obviously not very far at the moment with COVID, but wherever I am, it's recognizing that. And even adults, you know, I now run a safe place on social media called Breaking the Silence. And it's just full of beautiful people, and all those beautiful people have been broken, or maybe still are a bit broken. And it's a very open space to talk. And I, like I say, I run it, but the people in that group really do like work together to support each other. And it's a beautiful thing, because there's a lot of support out there. It's just finding that place. I would never have gone to this group. I would never have called Samaritans. I would never have, you know, I had a teacher who I used to speak to every week, but I just cried for it every week, because she wasn't equipped. She probably wasn't trained.
Exactly.
And nowadays there is a lot more safeguarding. There is a lot more understanding, but we need to go beyond that. And like I say, the work that I'm doing now, so I work with a PR team. I've got a new branding coming up. I've got a new project coming up. I've got a new book coming out. And this next sort of 18 months, 24 months is going to be a real big change. And I'm very excited about it, really excited, because my businesses have gone on and on and on and on and on. And now I'm sort of at this point where I'm like, this is where I need to be.
Yeah.
I can laterally step now and go, this is where I need to be. I got everything around me that I absolutely enjoy. But now it's about, this is the heart. I think I've done a lot of hard work, but now the gloves are really off.
Yeah. Yeah. This is your soul work.
Yes.
Exactly. So watch out, world. I can't believe how the time has flown. It's been an amazing time chatting with you today. For those listeners who are listening in going, oh my goodness, you know, you've sparked a lot of thoughts in their mind as to what next. How do they find you, Emma Jane?
So my website is www.emmajanetaylor.life. If you go there, you'll see all my social media. I talk very openly on Twitter, Instagram about these subjects, and you can find me on Facebook, and there's contact details there as well. So everything you need is on my website, emmajanetaylor.life, or emmajanetaylor.com will get you to me. And my ears are always open. I'm always here to listen. I'm always here to help. And do what I can to be the difference, because people need to know that they're not alone, and that's really important for me.
Fantastic. And you can hear that through all of your sharing. So those of you listening in, definitely reach out to Emma Jane. You know, if you're actually, you know, you're hearing her authenticity, you're hearing her heart in her sharing today. And I assure you, you will have such a warm welcome into her arms and her team, and being able to be told, yeah, what's the next step and where to from here, and how you can get support, and not just support from her, but from a whole community of people who actually do understand and do care and do value your voice. So I encourage you to do that, listening in. And I thank you so much, Emma Jane, for sharing your story with me today. And I wish you all the very best in your future success.
Thank you, Annie. It's been a pleasure to be here. And I just wanted to end the interview today by saying my stepfather is now 84 years old. He survived. He's my best friend, and he's all I need. And he's helped me understand the power of love, empathy, care, trust, respect, which has given me a settled and happy future. And also I want to thank you, Annie. You're doing a great job, and you know, your work is very well received all around the world. So thank you for what you're doing as well.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. You know, we all do what we can, and it makes the world a better place, right? So thank you so much, Emma Jane. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, Annie.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Memoirs of Successful Women. You can find me at anniegibbins.com, where you can download my free resources, get connected on social, and check out my online magic transformation program. If you love this show, feel free to subscribe to future episodes and, of course, share it with your friends. I'll see you again soon, and until then, happy podcasting.